What would you do if you found out the man you married never existed? I'm not talking metaphorically. I mean literally. No birth certificate, no social security number, no digital footprint, just a charming smile, a convincing story, and a fake name. Hi, I'm Natalie, and what started out as a dream marriage turned into a psychological thriller. It all started the day I gave birth. My husband, who held my hand at every ultrasound, looked at me and said, "We need a DNA test. I have a feeling something's not right." And that was the first domino to fall. What happened next involved federal agents, identity fraud, and a child that might not be mine. Sounds crazy, right? But it's the story I've lived through. And by the end of this video, you'll understand how easily a life can be changed forever, without the person involved even knowing. Leave a comment and let me know which city you're watching from. As the doctor placed the baby in my arms, I couldn't stop crying. Not because of pain, but because of happiness. Because after nearly a year of pregnancy, with so much worry and hope, I was now holding my whole world in my arms. Liam, my son, red, warm, smelling of milk and newborn skin. My heart had never been beating so fast. I turned to Derek, expecting the look of a first-time father breaking down. But his face was cold. There was no smile, no tears, just a scrutinizing gaze, as if he were looking at a stranger. "You," I began, my voice hoarse. "Aren't you going to hold the baby?" Derek didn't answer. He just looked at the child strangely, then spoke, slowly, razor sharp. "We need to do a DNA test. Now." The room froze. The doctor and the nurse glanced at each other, confused. My mother, sitting in the corner, jumped up. "What?" she snapped. "Derek, what the hell are you talking about? Your wife just gave birth." He didn't look at anyone, just kept staring at Liam, then at me. "I'm sorry, Natalie," he said in a voice I'd grown accustomed to during arguments, soft on the outside, steel on the inside. "But this boy doesn't look like me. Something feels wrong. I need to be sure." "Not like me?" I whispered, as if every cell in my body was reversing. "He's my son, Derek." "Maybe," he said, taking a step back. "But you know, anything is possible these days. Just checking. Just checking? Just checking? On the very first day my child was born, the very moment he should have held us and said, 'We're a family,' he chose to be skeptical. But I nodded. I was a woman who knew she had done nothing wrong, who had nothing to hide. I believed innocence was not afraid of verification. 2 days later, we went home. And that's when things began to fall apart, silently but cruelly. Derek stopped calling me babe. He stopped making me coffee in the morning like he used to. He stopped kissing my forehead before he left. He stopped saying, "I love you," when he turned off the lights. The little gestures that made love, gone, without warning. Instead, he started each day with a single sentence: "I think we'll have results soon." At first, I laughed it off. I tried to maintain a sense of normality. I sang lullabies to Liam. I sent him pictures of the baby at work. I told him about his first bath time cry. But all I got was a vague nod, or a repeated, "Just waiting to be sure, I understand." 3 weeks passed. We no longer slept in the same bed. Derek moved to the sofa. He said it was because I needed to rest after giving birth. But I knew he didn't want to be near me anymore. Liam cried in the middle of the night. I woke up alone, changed his diaper, fed him, rocked him to sleep, while Derek pulled the covers over his head. Before, if I even frowned, he would rush over. Now. He acted like I was a temporary tenant in his own home. One morning, I caught him standing by the crib, his eyes not of a father looking at his child, but of someone looking for evidence. "What are you doing?" I asked. He turned, startled. "Just see if he looks more like me," he mumbled. Don't say that in front of the child, I said, my voice shaking. He can feel it. Derek looked at me like I was crazy. Then he sighed and walked out of the room. I started taking notes. Every action, every word, in case I needed to prove something later. I looked for pictures of Derek as a child, compared them to Liam's. And strangely enough, there were none. No graduation pictures, no birthday pictures, no diaries, no pictures of him before he was 21. His mother was long gone, and his adoptive father, the only one still alive, had no contact. Everything burned in a fire, he'd said. I believed him then. Now, I wasn't so sure. One night, while I was washing dishes, Liam was lying peacefully in his crib when I heard Derek on the phone in the study. I wasn't in the habit of eavesdropping, but that day, I was stunned when he whispered, "She doesn't know anything. I just need the report. Once it's confirmed, I'm gone." I almost dropped the glass in my hand. Gone? Gone how? Where was he going? And who was he talking to? I had no idea who I was living with anymore. The next day, I called the hospital again, asked about the status of the test. "Oh, the DNA report isn't ready yet," the nurse said. "It usually takes about 6 weeks." I hung up, my hands shaking. So, if the results weren't back yet, why did Derek sound like he knew everything? That thought haunted me all night. And for the first time since Liam's birth, I felt scared. If you're watching this from anywhere, Chicago, Seattle, Dallas, Miami, leave a comment below. I want to know, have you ever seen someone you love change after just one question? Do you believe that a person can hide an entire past with just a few cleverly crafted stories? My name is Natalie, and this is only the beginning of the truth. The next part will shock you even more. I don't know when I stopped seeing Derek as the man who once proposed to me on one knee in the snow in Vale. Maybe it was the night he whispered about leaving, as if he had planned it all. Or maybe it was the morning after, when I opened his desk drawer and discovered hospital documents that weren't mine. Nestled in a pile of unopened mail was a pale yellow envelope, emblazoned with the logo of an obstetrics office. I opened it, my heart racing. Inside was a copy of the ultrasound results, dated 3 months before I got pregnant. The patient's name? Hannah Griggs. I'd never heard that name before in my life. And though I tried to keep my cool, part of me began to formulate a crazy theory. Derek might have had a child with someone else. Or he was hiding something much bigger. I turned on my computer and logged into the old email we'd shared as newlyweds. Derek hadn't deleted the account, but he'd mostly stopped using it since having Liam. I searched for Hannah Griggs, and I froze. The name popped up in medical billing, in immunization reminders even. A chat from Derek himself, sent 11 months ago. "I told you not to text me again. We had a deal. If you contact my wife, I'll make sure you regret it." The wife? That was me. My throat tightened. Who was Hannah? Who was the child? And what was the deal? I looked her up on Facebook. Her profile was set to private, but her profile picture showed a woman in her 30s with dark hair, holding a little girl who looked to be about 2 years old. The angle of the baby gave me goosebumps. She had the same dimples as Liam. I hadn't spoken to Nurse Rachel since leaving the hospital, but when I called back to ask about Derek's DNA test, she seemed hesitant. "You're Derek? Mitchell's wife, right?" She hesitated. My heart pounded. "Mitchell?" "No, my husband is Derek Miles." There was an awkward pause. "Oh, it must be a glitch in our system." She smiled wryly. "You know, sometimes patient information gets duplicated, especially for people who have changed their names." "Changed their names?" I pretended to agree and hung up. But in my head, it all started to come together. I remembered when we'd applied for Liam's birth certificate. Derek had handled it all, saying, "It's easy, I know the process." I didn't doubt it. But now I tried searching for Derek on public sites. No Derek Miles had attended the college he mentioned, no matching social security numbers, no online records before 2012. A 35-year-old man whose past the internet couldn't find? The next day, when Derek went out for his usual run, I went into the storage room, which he always locked, and said, "It's a mess, I'll clean it up later." I picked the lock. Inside were boxes of cardboard, sealed tightly. In a small wooden box, I found an old passport with the name Adrian Moss. The photo was Derek, but the name, date of birth, and nationality, they were all different. There was also an employee card at the bottom of the box, for a bank in Nevada, a place Derek had said he'd never been to. That bank I found in the news, involved in a 2015 financial fraud. I retreated to my room, closed the door, and hugged Liam tightly. My baby was real. My love was real. But the man I'd shared a bed with for the past 4 years, not someone I'd ever known. The next week, I got a call from an anonymous number. A woman's voice, a little shaky. "Are you Natalie?" "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Hannah Griggs. I don't want any trouble, but I thought, you should know. Derek didn't just lie to you. He made me give up our baby so he could keep the birth certificate. He said if I didn't cooperate, he would disappear and never pay a dime." I was speechless. "You should get tested again. And if you're smart, leave before he disappears with your baby." I couldn't sleep that night. Because for a second, I imagined a future where I woke up to an empty crib, no phone, and no trace of Derek. I used to think the worst part of marriage was being cheated on. But no. The worst part is not knowing who was lying next to me at night. I didn't know who Derek was. I didn't know if Liam was really my biological son, if everything was switched. I didn't know if I was living in a family or in a play directed by a liar. Have you ever had the experience of someone you were close to turn out to be someone else? If you were me, what would you do next? Comment below. I'm in Denver. Where are you watching? Friday, 9 a.m. My phone rings. Shown. Dr. Wilson, OBGYN. I almost dropped the bottle of milk I was warming. My heart was pounding so hard I couldn't hear Liam's soft sobs in my ear. "Hello?" I answered, my voice hoarse. "Mrs. Natalie Miles?" "Yes, I'm here. We received the DNA results. I'd like you and your husband to come in. Today, if possible." The words, simple, polite, professional, carried an obsession I couldn't quite define. Why hadn't the results been emailed as we'd signed up? Why did we both need to come? They knew, and I was about to know. 11:02 a.m. I sat in the exam room, my hands clutching the strap of my bag until they were white. Derek sat next to me. Quiet. He hadn't said anything since I'd called, hadn't asked why, hadn't asked what the results were. Just, "Yeah, I'll be there." We waited in a silence as thick as crude oil. On the TV, the morning news showed a snowstorm in the east, but inside me, a much bigger storm was brewing. "Natalie? Derek?" The door opened. Dr. Wilson, a sharp woman in her 50s with graying hair and X-ray eyes, beckoned us in. The office was neat, the chair upholstered in leather, the report card face down on the desk. She waited for us both to sit down before she began. "Before I give you the results, I want to make a few things clear. Your tests were processed by 2 independent labs. We are cautious because the results are not straightforward." I swallowed. Biologically, Mr. Derek Miles, or his legal name, Adrian Moss, has no genetic connection to Liam. I held my breath. In other words, he is not the biological father. I turned to Derek. His face did not change. There was no shock. There was no way cry as I had expected. No reaction. It occurred to me. He knew. You knew, I muttered. Right? Derek, or rather Adrian, looked at me, his eyes blank. You had a hunch, he said, and your hunch was right. Dr. Wilson interjected. Wait, that's not all. Natalie, we also ran your DNA, and there's no perfect match between you and Liam. I was stunned. You could have been given the wrong baby at the hospital, or maybe someone switched it on purpose. My heart shattered. No, it can't be. I gave birth to him. I remember. I was skin to skin with him. We know that. But biology doesn't lie. I screamed in my head. Liam, the baby I held from the first moment, nursing at my breast, crying in my arms. Wasn't he mine? Dr. Wilson said the hospital had launched an internal investigation. They checked the midwifery records that day, and there was another birth at the same time as mine. The other mother, Hannah Griggs. I was shocked. The name came up again. We can't say for sure, but there's a chance Liam is Hannah's child. Then, what about my real child? I screamed. Where is my child? Adrian stood up. I think we should stop here. Natalie, we'll talk later. Sit down, I shouted. You knew all along, right? You knew the child wasn't yours, and you knew Liam probably wasn't mine. So why didn't you say anything? He turned to me, his eyes drained of emotion. There was only a con artist exposed. Because you needed a child in your name. For inheritance, for citizenship, for legalization. You used Liam to legalize a false identity? The doctor was stunned. He shrugged. American law favors people with children. Easy to get papers, easy to change names. For someone like me, it's the perfect plan. I jumped up, pushed back my chair. You're a monster. That same afternoon, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I called the FBI. I told them about the fake name evidence, about the Adrian Moss passport, about the baby swap, about Hannah Griggs, about Liam. And I said, I think I'm living with a federal con man, and maybe a kidnapper. That night, I lay next to Liam, whether he was biological or not. I loved him with all my heart. I whispered, You are real. You are my light. And no one is going to take you away from me. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew one thing. I was awake. And I was going to fight. If you're reading this, comment. If you found out your adopted child wasn't your biological child, what would you do? Would you speak up? Would you keep quiet? Or fight to find out the ultimate truth? That night, I couldn't sleep. Liam lay still in my arms, eyes half closed, his tiny lips moving slightly in his sleep. I looked at him and felt my heart being torn in two. Half with unconditional love. Half with the deep pain of knowing that he might not be my biological child. But the biggest pain right now wasn't about Liam. It was about the man I'd trusted enough to trust with my life, who turned out to be no one at all. The next morning, I started tracking. I called an old friend, Ellie, who worked in a New Mexico law firm that handled identity and false documents. Ellie, I said, my voice strained, I need to look up Derek Miles, born August 22nd, 1987. Could be fake. Could have been Adrian Moss, or something else. She hesitated. What do you suspect? I don't think my husband is anyone. He's not real. I need to know who he is, before he disappears. A few hours later, Ellie called back. I picked up, my heart pounding. Natalie, this is beyond anything I've ever encountered. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Derek Miles wasn't in any federal system before 2015. All the records? started with a rented address in Reno, Nevada. Everything, from his driver's license to his tax returns, was filed in the same week. It was like he just came out of nowhere. I could barely breathe. I checked Adrian Moss and Natalie. He was under investigation by the FBI in 2016 for identity theft, marriage fraud, and using the identities of missing children to build a false profile. But he disappeared before he was caught. No one knew where he went until you called me. I dug through the wedding album. Among the dozens of photos, I noticed something. There was no family of Derek's, no parents, no siblings, no close friends. I remembered him saying, "My family can't come. My parents are dead. My relatives live overseas." I used to believe, because when you love someone, you want to believe. But looking back, it all seems like an act. I called Hannah Griggs again. Her voice was shaking, but this time she wasn't afraid. "I need to talk to her face to face," I said. "You're the only one who can help me understand everything." We met at a small coffee shop a little over 20 miles outside Denver. Hannah walked in, holding a baby girl in her arms. A girl who looked strikingly like Liam. We sat down. After a few seconds of silence, Hannah began to tell us. "I met him when I worked at a gas station. He called himself Adam, said he was trying to get his life back together after his divorce. He was thoughtful, sweet, a good listener. I fell in love quickly." "And then what?" I asked. "I got pregnant. When I told him, he changed, said he'd take care of everything, and then he started controlling. He forced me to sign the birth certificate, then disappeared. Said he needed time, but really, he took my baby to another hospital, did the adoption, with fake papers." My mouth fell open. I never saw my baby again, until I saw a picture of you and Liam on Facebook. I knew. It was my daughter. Those eyes, those cheekbones, there was no mistaking it. I almost choked. The story began to unravel. Adrian pretended to be Derek Miles, taking advantage of the chaos in the delivery room and the lax paperwork at the community hospital to switch babies between mothers. Obtained a new birth certificate in his name, filed for new citizenship, opened a bank account, registered for a legal ID. With a child named Miles, he built an untraceable cover. And me? I was just the next piece of his plan. A middle-class woman with a clean record, easy to manipulate, and able to legitimize his fake life all over again. Ellie sent me another email that night. "Nat, you might want to see this." Attached was a chat log taken from an FBI-monitored server where hackers sold fake identities and personal documents. A message appeared. Username, BlueFox_21. Looking for single mom or easy-to-manipulate woman, middle-aged, financially stable. Plan, approach, have kids, assume new identity, settle in Colorado. BlueFox21. The IP logs in from the exact block where I live. I don't wait for the FBI. I don't wait for him to come back. I send Adrian Miles Moss a text. "We need to talk, one last time, about Liam, about Hannah, about everything." I don't say the FBI is watching. I don't say I have a file. I don't say I'm wearing a recording device. I meet him in the park the next morning. He shows up on time, smiling like nothing happened. I take one last look at him, the man who was my world, now a snake in human skin. I turn on the recorder, and I ask, "Who are you?" He doesn't answer. He just smiles, nods, and whispers, "I'm a man who knows how to survive." "And you?" "You're just starting to learn to live." 3 minutes later, the FBI shows up, and I don't shed a tear. Adrian is arrested. The mask fell. But what happened next was what really hit me. It was all just the tip of the iceberg. 3 days after the arrest, I was called into the FBI office. Agent Diaz, the case officer, took me into a quiet conference room. She placed a file on the table marked in red. Confidential. Classified family linkage. Natalie, she said, serious. There's something you need to know. About Liam. I nodded. My heart was pounding. We ran Liam's DNA and checked it against federal biological records. There's a match. A match. With me? I asked, hope fading. She shook her head. She flipped the file open. Number with someone else. Someone involved in a mysterious disappearance 7 years ago. The FBI continued. In 2016, billionaire Carl Langford's only son, Mason Langford, was presumed dead after a yacht accident, but his body was never found. The case was closed. We discovered that Liam, the baby you're raising, is a perfect DNA match to Carl Langford. I was stunned. You mean, Liam is not your son, nor is he Hannah's son. He is the grandson of one of the richest families in the American West. Adrian didn't just switch the baby to redo the paperwork. He intentionally switched the baby with a powerful bloodline. We believe Adrian was working as a security guard at the Langford Resort the year of the accident. He may have witnessed or orchestrated the baby swap during the chaos. Then 5 years later, he came back, trying to get the baby into the system through a mother. And she was the chosen one. A chill ran down my spine. Liam, the baby I loved like my own flesh and blood, was the center of a criminal scheme that had spanned nearly a decade. The next day, I was invited to the Langford mansion, under heavy security. Carl Langford, silver hair, expensive suit, piercing eyes, walked in with his lawyer and bodyguard. But when he saw Liam, he fell silent. His eyes were shining, his hand trembling as he touched the baby's cheek. "That's him," he said softly. "That's my little Mason." I pulled back. "I can't give him to you. I raised him. I am his mother, even though we're not blood." He looked at me, not angry, but sad. "I didn't come to take my son away from you. I came to thank you. You protected my son from the very man we trusted." Carl handed me an envelope. Inside were a handwritten thank you note, a confirmation document. He appointed me as Liam's legal guardian, with full financial and legal rights. A bank account opened in Liam's name, with a 7-digit number. "I can't replace you as a mother, but I can help my child have both love and a future. You deserve it." I burst into tears. Because after all, my love for Liam was recognized. Not by DNA, but by truth and trust. The press reported loudly, "Young mother exposes fraudster who swapped babies to steal billionaire's identity." FBI breaks up fake identity network after complaint from Denver mother. Imposter didn't know that the baby he swapped was the key to overthrowing everything. I appeared on a morning talk show, sharing my journey to find the truth. Not to be famous, but to say, if something is wrong, trust your intuition. Find it. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come from DNA, but from what your heart is protecting. Adrian was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for fraud, kidnapping, and false pretenses. Hannah was reunited with her real daughter, and I retained custody of Liam. Once a victim, now a symbol of hope and justice. I didn't break things. I didn't scream. I just found out the truth, and let him punish the liar. Today, as I sit here writing this, Liam is playing with Legos on the carpet, giggling like any other 3-year-old. To him, the world is still a safe and magical place. And perhaps that's the most beautiful thing I can hold on to, in the midst of a storm that nearly wiped it all out. I used to think family is blood, DNA, what's legal. But no. Family is where your heart chooses to love, regardless of biological facts. I don't need a test to know I'm Liam's mother. I don't need blood to know that I protected my child, loved him, sacrificed everything for him. Every sleepless night, every bottle, every hug when he was feverish. And I don't need a trial to understand one simple thing. The truth, once exposed, will always be stronger than any lie. The last lesson: trust your intuition. If something feels wrong, it really is wrong. Don't ignore that uneasy feeling. It could be the first call of truth. Don't be afraid of the truth, no matter how painful. The truth may knock you down temporarily, but it's also the only thing that keeps you standing strong. Love is not a matter of genes. It's a matter of presence, of rocking your child to sleep, of choosing to stay when everyone else leaves. And if you're here, leave a comment and let me know. What did you learn from this journey? Have you ever had doubts about someone in your life, but were afraid to face the truth? I'm Natalie, from Denver. Where are you watching? Tell me. Because who knows? Your story might be a guiding light for someone else.